I just wanted to add, welcome to Canada. There's a Canadian, we talk about 6 degrees of separation. There's a Canadian connection to someone who's not here with us anymore, James Cameron. He was in Poltergeist, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I was forced to watch that movie when I was 4 years old because my great aunt, my grandmother's sister, she was procured to create the clown that comes alive in that movie. So that's kind of my connection to James Cameron, connection to this movie. So there's a lot of that going on. So thank you very much, guys. Hello. So there was a horror movie trivia in here earlier by these two gentlemen. Okay. And it made me think of a question I wanted to ask. Because I've always wondered this when watching this movie, but could never figure it out. Okay. What, if anyone else knows this in the audience, what is written in the medical supply warehouse office wall?
Eye chart. The eye chart.
The eye chart. What does it actually say?
Who knows that?
Clue?
What does it say in the eye chart?
You need it?
No.
Yeah. You need a medical supply warehouse. There's an eye chart that starts off by saying Bert is a
Was it sexual?
I don't know. I couldn't read the bottom print.
Bird is a slave driver.
I give up.
Yeah, Bert is a slave driver. And there was, Vanessa Williams was hanging next to
That was the best
slave driver.
And a son of a bitch or something?
Yeah, I think so,
Bert
yeah.
driver is a slave driver.
Yeah, Bird is a slave driver and a son of a bitch.
Right. And I
And
only
there's
recently,
more at the bottom.
I think that's what,
It's hard to read.
I only recently found out about the view on the jacket, so I was like stunned because I never got that. Okay, I just didn't get it. But, there's all those little things. I don't know all those little things. What are all those little things? The little words that you're the one that said the great one-liners. I don't remember any of them. So say great.
Watch the movie.
Yeah, that leads into my second question. Second question, is there any lines that you improvised that made it into the movie or didn't that you really liked?
Like this job!
Dan, for a writer-director to let his actors go off and make and improvise, it was kudos to him because a lot of writers, directors don't allow you to do that. And that was making the movie would always be a near and dear to my heart because of that experience. It was really feel like it truly was a collaboration. Because when Jimmy and I would come up with, I had a lot of scenes with Jimmy Cameron, and we came up with a lot of stuff, and we always talked to Dan about it, and he said, go for it. So that was kind of cool. So a lot of it, like this job, There's a bunch of stuff. I'm sure you guys.
Ballbuster was in it, and this is 50 shots later. And when Dan had finally decided this was going to be the take he was going to use, he threw in a mark into that ballbuster scene, and that's when you look at, I'm actually really shocked, because that's not acting, I'm really shocked. He's saying this whole ballbuster thing. So that's another one. That's the only one I remember. Okay.
No, we don't. These actors were so perfectly cast that, no, I don't think we improvised, so you could call it improv, except one time when I was standing outside the set and Don Council was ready to go on to sock Miguel. I said, what should I do? He said to me, I don't know why he said that. I said, well, look, you got to hit him, all right? He said, yeah, well, hit him twice. Don't let him know you're going to hit him a second time. And let's see his reaction and see if he keeps playing it. So he went in action. He went in the door, and this guy was standing there. He was all he was mixed up. And to snap him out of it, he grabbed him and he hit him. And then he hit him again. And I watched because I said, oh, they're going to get me for giving this guy this direction. But they didn't. No, it worked out so well. And that's the only improv that I was associated with, I know.
Thank you. I improvised brains. Originally in the script it was pancreases. I looked up and I said, pancreas! And I said, that doesn't sound right. Shouldn't it be like brains?
Brains are so spicy.
One interesting thing regarding his character, as you know, I knocked his block off. That wasn't Alan. There was a short stuntman.
It was the same actor, Yellow Man.
And the stuntman I met many decades later. I said, how in the hell were you able, did you have the nerve, a working actor like me, kind of a middle-aged guy, with a baseball bat, a Louisville Slugger no less, how did you manage to let me hit hard as I could your head? He said, Clu, I had to work. When people ask me to work, I go, I work, no matter what or where. And I understood, he's a stuntman. And his height impaired his availability many times. And he said, I have to work when I get a job. And luckily, just luckily, you know, I swung, with Tom, I swung as hard as I could and hit that thing, and it flew off like a baseball.
It hit me.
And I was really impressed with that hit when I saw it in the movie. And I asked this guy, all my life I wondered why some stuntman would do that with an untrained middle-aged actor. And he told me why, and I understood immediately.
Yeah, you hit it hard.
Anybody else got a question they want to come up and ask? Anybody? Well, I do.
All right, it's your turn.
Okay, this is for each of you, if you want to answer this question. Your best story or memory of James Karen, like that. It could either be from the set or just your favorite memory.
I had a lot, as I said earlier, I had a lot of scenes with Jimmy. So we were always in the makeup chair together. And he was a veteran actor by the time, you know, he was doing Return of the Living Dead. He had done a lot of stuff. Told me stories of when he was paid the gentleman caller in Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway with Brando, and really good friends with Jason Robards, and how he was at a play with Jason Robards, and Marilyn Monroe was in the play, and he would see the play a lot because he was friends and he was supporting Jason, his buddy. And he said the bar was in Jason's room back in the day. So during the third act, he went back to go get a drink, and JFK was in there with Marilyn Monroe. He walked in on him. And he goes, oh, I'm so sorry, I walked out. Then JFK apologized to Jimmy and gave him a lighter, and they had the same initials, JFK. He gave Jimmy Karen the lighter, his own lighter, so he had that lighter. But he would tell me all these great stories about him being a young actor in New York coming up, and you know, all his shenanigans and stuff. And no, I didn't hear that one. And we became really close friends. We stayed in touch, and we found out on part 2 that we had the same birthday. We were born the same day in November, and you know, it would invite him over for Christmas dinners and stuff like that at the house. So him and I would always come over. And before I did the movie, I was in acting class with his wife Alba. She was in the same acting class together. So we have all that. But he was just really a gem. Sorry to have him go.
I never had a scene with James Karen, but he was so sweet to me every time I saw him. Every time on the set, at these, I got to know him more at these reunions than I ever did working on the movie, because I never worked with him, not once. But in the rehearsals, and before we started principal photography, there was an actor's strike in Hollywood, and we had gotten in under the buzzer. We had gotten this job that was going into production, and so we were going to be working during the actor's strike in Hollywood, and Jim took all the kids to, and he said, just remember everybody, we're working. And I just remember him saying that going, God, this guy's so enthusiastic. He's being so nice and friendly. And at that age, at that time of my life, it wasn't about being all nice and friendly and enthusiastic. It was kind of like you're a sullen, teen, you're kind of like a, grumpy actor, like, yeah, I'm doing this, but, it's no big deal or anything. But he was enthusiastic and he was right. He was right to be that way and beautiful to be that way and brave in his kindness. I really loved him.
Right. I really love Jimmy. My memory with him is that he used to bring Jason Robards to the set. And Jason was quite the drinker, and so was I. I was a party chick. And, okay. We would go drinking in the back of course, again, a Tombstone. We had so many of them back in those days. And Jason would tell me stories of the good old days of Hollywood. And the story with Nancy Reagan involving Jimmy Caron, when he used to date Nancy Reagan. I mean, these fascinating tales, because you would hear these just amazing stories. And Jimmy, throughout the years, would tell me, he would do a signing in Burbank, and he would invite me to his signing when Alba is his wife, that now she was out in the East Coast dealing with her family issues, and he would just say how much he was so thankful that he married the most fabulous woman on the planet, this woman, Alba, and he would cry that he was scared that if he'd never had her. And when he passed, in that memorial, did you go? Did you? Yeah. And she was so graceful, and so the amount of love that you saw from all the people that he knew, and this was only a fraction, because this place could only sit like 150 people, and he had so many more friends, and everyone said such wonderful things. And I just really, I miss Jimmy. I can't really say.
I have a story about Linnea, the girl who played one of the kids, Linnea.
Linnea.
And are there any children in the audience?
No.
Okay, well, this was in the plaza. This was a scene in the plaza. Action. And I watched, I couldn't see anything, and out of the darkness came this nude woman, swaying her hips, walking toward the camera. And I looked down between her legs, and there was a rose bush. It looked like a fucking rose bush down there. I said, what the fuck? And they said, cut. They said, okay guys, look, what did you do with Linnea? I said, well, we put one of those things on. What do they call them, John?
Prosthetic.
Yeah, it's a prosthetic. They have a name.
It's a mirror. How do you hear that?
Anyway, John, are you here?
It's a merkin.
Anyway, they put it on her in between her legs to hide her genitalia. They didn't want it to be too vulgar. It was the most vulgar image I've ever seen in my life. It was huge, just like a rose bush. And they said, look, what are we going to do? So the guy said, well, let's try it without it. They took it off, okay, action. She started, and it looked so good. It looked so natural. Everything was in shadows. It looked real, it looked human. And it wasn't sexual, it was scary. She was a fucking zombie, you know. And so that's the thing I remembered most about that film.
About James, yeah, about James. Alan.
So James was wearing this merkin one day. That was it, right? Merkin.
Any of you ladies wear marks?
Oh, God.
No, I didn't work with Jimmy on the set, so all of my memories of him are from these, the past 10, 15 years that we've been doing these conventions. And I just remember the best times we had when we would go out to dinner as a group, and I just remember his basic joy of life, just having a good time, laughing, making other people laugh, and his warmth and just his force of personality, you know, was just fantastic. That's mostly.
Well, you want to tell how he saved the day? Jimmy saved the day.
I don't know that story.
No, you can save the day. Jimmy saved the day between you and Dan when you didn't get along? Okay, we don't need to do that. All right, good question.
We got room for one more question before, but then there we go, there's one more. One more question.
This is actually for Clue.
Oh, sorry.
I'll be speaking for Clue.
Okay. So, Clue, you've been acting in movies and TV shows since the 1950s?
Correct.
Correct. So you've seen film progress up till just recently, obviously, because you're in the new Tarantino film. What is the first thing off the top of your head that's changed the most?
He was also waiting for the tangerine.
Digital. The way you never hear check the gate anymore when you're filming.
That's right. Check the gate. Do you want to explain to people what check the gate is?
That's a powerful question. What changed the most in my working period in movies?
Yes, from when you started till now, because you've seen the progression all the way up till from the 50s till now, like 60 years of television and film.
Well, of course, we all think immediately of, sexual revolution where they had actual sex in legitimate movies, and one of the big hits of my time was, what's the name of that sexual movie where the guy came on, Harry something? In other words, sex became so prevalent as one of the major phenomenon of movies that sometimes, I guess, it overpowered. I saw a film one time with blue in the title from Sweden, Two Girls. It was a marvelous film, but there was a 7.5-minute sex scene in it, lesbian scene.
Blue is the warmest color.
Oh, did you get that?
Blue is the warmest color.
Okay, and that to me was I don't know if it was good or bad. It stopped the film, the dramatic input of the story. I enjoyed it because I'm a male. I enjoyed watching the two girls go at it. But I just wonder if, in fact, we went, that was the pinnacle of what I've seen in a legitimate, very legitimate film. And so I'm not sure that anything tops that in my mind. I saw a film one time out of, I think, Denmark. It was where, and I can't think of the name of it, it was an art film. I'm sure none of you have seen it. There was no reason for it to come here. But it was a film about a man who thought everything was normal that was abnormal. And they did things in that film that I've never, it's so wrong that it became, you had to watch it. What was the name of that, John?
From that description, I'm not really getting it yet.
The question should be, how old is Clue?
In other words, we went to a certain point, now we're leveling off and we're coming back to real money on normal imagery like Thrones, beautifully made film, but with, stuff, violence that we can handle. And that to me is, I think we've gone back to almost television production in some of our motion pictures on Netflix and Amazon. Great acting, but the filmmaking is kind of pedestrian sometimes. That's you guys probably disagree with me, but that's my thinking.
Just how old are you, Clue? How old are you?
How young are you?
How young are you? 90 years old, and At 90. That's
maybe time for one quick last question. Got 5 minutes left, so before we wrap it up, and then the photo op I think is after this. So unless you have a story anybody up here wants to tell in 5 minutes, or if anybody else got a quick question, or we'll just wrap it up here.
I've got something. There we go.
This is not so much a question, just a quick story about the extent this movie's influence has had. Yesterday, I traveled here to be here, and I don't cross the border very much, so I haven't had a whole lot of interactions with border crossings. But as my flight was delayed, all kinds of problems, I didn't get in until about 1:30 last night. So I'm crossing the border, and I go to the checkpoint, and there's no cars around. I'm the only car, and I pull up to the station, and I've got my passport out, and it's a guy in his 50s, and he checks my passport out, and he says, "What are you doing here in Canada?" And I said, "Well, I wasn't going to say I'm here for the fresh kills kind of convention. I wasn't going to tell a law enforcement officer that, but I just said I'm here for a convention." Then he says, "What's the convention for?" I said, "Okay, it's for horror movie fans of the 1980s." And he goes, "Well, what movie are they focusing on?" And I'm like, "Man, this guy's really hardcore. He's really quizzing me." They said, "Well, he said, what's the movie about?" And I was getting a little nervous, so I said, "Well, it's about this guy who owns this warehouse," and I'm getting nervous, so I'm juggling the details. And I said, "It's a guy about it's about a guy who owns this warehouse that stores cadavers." And he pauses, and he's staring at me, and he goes, "It's about a guy who owns a warehouse that stores medical supplies, isn't that right?" And we sat and talked about Return of the Living Dead for about 2 minutes until the next car came out. Like, that's how far this movie has influence. A border patrol officer is going to quiz somebody. So, I can't tell you how special this is for fans like me, for you guys to take the time to do this, for all the conventions you've done in the past. This movie has brought so much laughter and joy to so many. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you guys.
Anyway, let's everybody give a round of applause for John, All right, so everybody's got the photo ops, and we'll figure out all that, but they'll be back at their tables after that. If you got anything you want to get signed or just want to shoot the shit, then they're there for that.